Hey guys, welcome back to Based MMA. In this video, I'm going to be discussing UFC fighters that went from being loved to being hated. And some of these fighters on this list aren't necessarily hated, but they're heavily disliked or people just don't care about them anymore. Whereas at a time, these fighters were loved. And before I get started with this list, please make sure to like and subscribe. Please make sure to subscribe, like the video, help me reach 2,000 subscribers, guys. I will be doing a giveaway when I reach 2K, guys. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you guys watching the videos, guys. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for that. So let's get started. At my number 5, this is a fighter that went from being kind of irrelevant to being loved to now people are turning on him again. Well, not turning on him, but yeah, people are kind of turning on him. And that is Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards, prior to that second Usman fight, I felt like people didn't give a shit about him. He had that fight with Nate Diaz where, you know, all people remember was him getting hurt in that fifth round and Nate Diaz pointing at him. So pretty much Leon Edwards got embarrassed and people don't even remember that fight in general, besides the fact that Nate Diaz rocked him in the fifth round. And then prior to that, Leon Edwards was on this winning streak. He eye poked Bilal Muhammad. So people don't really care about Leon Edwards until last year in August, where Leon Edwards was able to shock the world and head kick KO Kamaru Usman. And I remember at the time, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but I remember people being like, Leon Edwards, he's going to be an exciting champion. Thank God that he knocked out Kamaru Usman. We're tired of Kamaru Usman. Leon Edwards is such a great striker. He's going to be so entertaining, so many crazy matchups. The welterweight division is exciting again. I remember so many MMA fans saying that. And now the trilogy happened, wasn't the greatest fight. I didn't, even though Leon Edwards, I think he decisively won the fight. It wasn't one of those impressive performances. He did enough just to win, in my opinion. And then, people were still on that Leon Edwards kind of hype train. And then, he hasn't fought in quite a while now. And I feel like a lot more MMA fans are starting to turn on Leon Edwards, where I see a lot of hate comments on his post, guys. And now with his most recent comments he made last week in an interview, pretty much saying that if he beats Colby Covington, he wants to move up and challenge for the middleweight belt. That even brought a lot more hate, and I see a lot more MMA fans turning on Leon Edwards, where I feel like Leon Edwards, if we remove that head kick KO, he's the same guy. He's been the same guy, the same type of fighter, but because he knocked out Kamaru Usman, which is the best thing he's done in his career and probably will ever do, in my opinion, now people are starting to turn on him, and Leon Edwards is starting to become irrelevant again, and people don't want him as champion, whereas in a year ago, people were so happy that he had knocked out Kamaru Usman. So for that reason, I have Leon Edwards at number 5. At number 4, I have Rose Namajunas. And when she knocked out Wei Lee in the very first round with that head kick, I remember a lot of people were saying, oh my God, Rose Namajunas, she's the best strawweight fighter. She has incredible striking. She's so technical. She's levels above these girls. And then she had that second Wei Lee fight, was a little bit more competitive. But, Rose still won that fight in the judges' scorecard, even though I thought Wei Lee won that fight. It's whatever. Then she comes back in May, fights Carla Esparza, puts one of the worst fights I've ever seen in my life. They were just like, no strikes were being thrown. The most boring 5-round fight ever in the UFC. And I feel like after that, a lot of MMA fans turn on Rose Namajunas, where as in before they were saying, oh, she's one of the best strikers. She's so exciting. She's knocking these girls out. And then the Carla Esparza fight happened. People kind of shit on her for that fight. Then she kind of fell into irrelevancy, came back this year and fought at a heavier weight class in the flyweight division, fought Manon Fiorot, lost that fight, and now people have turned on her. She gets meme for saying I'm the best. She gets meme for, still being with Pat Barry and that whole relationship. So it's crazy how big of a downfall some of these UFC fighters have. Like, they go from being loved to being hated. I mean, that's also part of the times we live in. I feel like people quickly become popular and then they quickly become hated. We live in a very reactionary culture where things are extreme, and I feel like Rose Namajunas was a victim of that. Now, moving on to number 3, this is Cory Sandhagen. Cory Sandhagen, considered one of the best strikers in the bantamweight division, at least top 3 in my opinion. He's had pretty exciting fights. I mean, he had a pretty exciting fight against Peter Yan, even though he lost. He had been knocking out guys with shit flying knees and stuff like that. So Cory Sandhagen was becoming kind of a fan favorite in the bantamweight division. And then he fought, you know, Cheeto Vera. Because I feel like that Song Yadong fight, it was still impressive enough where people were like, oh, you know, Cory Sandhagen, he's still a great UFC fighter. And then a great striker. And then the Marlon Vera happened. And, you know, people were still impressed. They're like, okay, Cory Sandhagen becoming more well-rounded. He pretty much dismantled Marlon Vera, took him down, exposed a big hole in Marlon Vera's game, which he did. And then the Rob Font happened. The Rob Font fight happened. And people were so excited because they're like, Rob Font, incredible boxer, coming off, knocking out Adrian Yanez. You know, Cory Sandhagen is looking good. He's getting better. And what ended up happening in that Cory Sandhagen versus Rob Font fight? It was a 5 round, pretty much boring ass fight of Cory Sandhagen pretty much laying on top of Rob Font. No striking happening. Anytime there was a striking exchange, us MMA fans were like, oh my god, this is kind of getting good. Cory Sandhagen takes him down. So after that fight, I saw so many MMA fans turning on Cory Sandhagen, pretty much saying, man, this guy's boring. He shouldn't get a title shot. That was one of the worst performances in the UFC. You know, people were booing in the crowd. Cory Sandhagen had to apologize in his post-fight interview. And I feel like Cory Sandhagen was considered one of the best strikers. You know, people wanted to see that Sean O'Malley versus Cory Sandhagen fight. But now I don't think people want to see it as much because they think of Cory Sandhagen as this guy that's going to go out to grapple and win boring ass decision where, you know, a couple years ago, a year ago, it seemed like he wanted to strike. So a lot of MMA fans have turned on Cory Sandhagen, and for that reason, I have Cory Sandhagen at my number 3. Now moving on to my number 2, this is Khamzat Chimaev, man. Khamzat Chimaev, prior to that Gilbert Burns fight, people loved it. Oh my god, this guy's the next up-and-comer. He's absolutely going to destroy every welterweight. He's going to knock out Gilbert Burns. He's going to submit Kamaru Usman in the very first round. No one's going to be able to beat this guy. This guy's going to become the triple champ of the UFC. All these crazy things were said about Khamzat Chimaev. He had so many fans. So many MMA fans were fans of Khamzat Chimaev. Then the Gilbert Burns fight happens. And it was a war. You know, a lot of people that were hyping up Khamzat Chimaev kind of took a step back and they were like, oh, you know, maybe this guy's not that good. But, you know, most of his fans still stayed his fans because, you know, he still had a war. You know, Gilbert Burns is a top welterweight. It's still an impressive win. At the end of the day, Khamzat Chimaev ends up winning that fight. And then we get back, and then we get to UFC 279 where Khamzat Chimaev was going to fight Nate Diaz. Misses weight, which I think was all done on purpose, guys. I really do feel like, you know, that whole Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson shit, it was all, you know, it was all rigged from the start. I really do believe that, you know, the UFC had that plan because the card wasn't looking that exciting. The Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz fight didn't make any sense. But that's besides the point. You know, Khamzat Chimaev misses weight by 7 to 8 pounds. And that's where the UFC fans started to turn on him because they're like, man, how are you going to be a welterweight champion? You miss weight. People start turning on him. He destroys Kevin Holland that nobody cared about. Then hasn't fought in over a year. Kind of falls into irrelevancy. Puts that performance against the Kamaru Usman on 10 days notice. And people have suddenly turned on Khamzat Chimaev, calling him a fraud. You know, not his fan anymore. This guy won't even beat Sean Strickland. He went from being one of the most hyped up fighters in UFC history, Khamzat Chimaev, to now being one of the, I would say, a top 5 most disliked fighter in the UFC currently. So for that reason, guys, I have Khamzat Chimaev at my number 2. Now moving on to my number 1 UFC fighter that went from being liked to absolutely hated, and I hate this guy myself, Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane. Did I say Ciryl? I'm going to say Ciryl Gane. Ciryl Gane, you know, prior to that Francis Ngannou fight, had a little bit of hype. You know, he was on a good little win streak. You know, he was going to decisions, had that TKO stoppage over Derek Lewis. Then, you know, he fought Francis Ngannou. Wasn't the most exciting fight, but most MMA fans, you know, kind of blame Francis Ngannou for that fight being boring against Ciryl Gane. No, I didn't really see too many fans blaming Ciryl Gane for that fight. You know, a lot of fans actually thought he won that fight. So Ciryl Gane had a lot of fans. Then he puts an absolute banger against Tai Tuivasa back and forth, and he was able to finish Tai Tuivasa in the 3rd round. A very exciting heavyweight fight, and it seemed like everybody, yeah, Ciryl Gane, one of the best heavyweights. He is the best heavyweight in the division. This guy's super exciting. Had a ton of fans, a ton of stan accounts on Twitter. I remember everybody had a profile pic of Ciryl Gane. And then he fights Jon Jones. He fights Jon Jones and chokes. He choked. He gets submitted by Jon Jones in the very first round. Didn't even put up a fight. Looked nervous as shit walking out. And I get it. I mean, he's fighting Jon Jones. But come on, man. Jon Jones had not fought in heavyweight. Hadn't fought in 3 years. His last fight, he controversially won that fight against Dominic Reyes. But Ciryl Gane choked. He shit his pants against Jon Jones. Got choked in the very first round. And everybody in the MMA community, specifically the people that picked him to beat Jon Jones, just absolutely hates Ciryl Gane now. I think he's an absolute fraud, very one-dimensional fighter. Then, fights Spivak, beats Spivak, comes out and says that he wants a title shot. And that's when MMA fans turn on Ciryl Gane because they're like, bro, you're coming off 0-2 in title shots. You just beat Sergey Spivak, who's not considered a top heavyweight in anybody's eyes. You beat that guy, and you think you should be back in the title picture? Absolutely not. You got submitted by Jon Jones in 1 round. It's not like you put a good fight. So Ciryl Gane, when he went from being loved to being absolutely disliked now, and now Ciryl Gane, he didn't want to fight Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich, but now that Tom Aspinall has become the interim champ, now he wants to fight Tom Aspinall, and Tom Aspinall, being based, said, nah, fuck you, you gotta go fight Almeida and earn your title shot. So it just shows how fast fighters can go from being liked to being disliked. I mean, Ciryl Gane was very liked, and now it seems like he's being disliked for some of the comments he's made and some of the decisions he's made with his career. So for that reason, I have Ciryl Gane at number 1.